From Green 960 in San Francisco, I'm Beth Greer, and this is your Supernatural Life. This show is part of the Green Morning, heard every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific. My show is about taking natural living up a notch to supernatural living, and each week I interview top experts who show you ways to live a supernatural life. And my goal is to keep us all healthy, and one way to do that is to become aware that everything, what we eat, touch, use to clean, build, and furnish our homes, as well as the invisible electronic pollution we're exposed to, is linked to our health and well-being. As I've said many times before on the show, we are being bombarded by chemicals in our everyday products. And the sad thing is, babies in the womb have been tested with over 200 toxic industrial chemicals in their bloodstream. And once they're born, they're exposed to even more toxins like lead, flame retardants, and pesticides that's found in house dust and on carpets. And pregnant women are exposed to things like endocrine-disrupting chemicals like BPA, which is found in plastic water bottles and in canned food, the lining of canned food, which can increase their risk of breast cancer and miscarriage. Well, most people believe that because a chemical is permitted to be used in a consumer product that it must be safe. Well, it's not true, at least not in here in America, where over 85,000 chemical compounds are in use today, and fewer than 10% have been tested for their effects on human health. Fewer than 10%. Scientists are reporting a strong link between poor health and exposure to environmental toxins. Well, my guest today says that the way to change this is to use our voices and our dollars as consumers and express our concerns by speaking out to our elected officials. Mary Brune is co-founder and project director of Moms, Making Our Milk Safe, sponsored by the Center for Environmental Health. Moms is a national grassroots movement of mothers working to create a healthier, safer environment for children. They use education, advocacy, and corporate campaigns aimed at eliminating the presence of toxic chemicals in our environment. And Mom's mission is to inform pregnant women and new moms about the health effects to children from exposure to chemicals before, during, and after pregnancy. They also provide information about safer alternatives for products like cleaning supplies, food storage containers, personal care products, and home furnishings. Last year, Mary received the Susie Kane Leadership Award from the Breast Cancer Fund for her work to ban toxic chemicals that contribute to breast cancer. Welcome to your Supernatural Life, Mary.
Thank you so much, Beth. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. So tell us about the Moms Project and how it got started and when it got started. Were you the one who first created it?
Well, Moms got started about 5 years ago in August of 2005. My daughter had just turned 6 months old, and I'd actually recently gone back to work. And I came home one day, happened to sit down on the sofa to breastfeed her after being away all day, and I happened to turn on the evening news. And I saw a news story about a study done out of Texas Tech University where they had tested the breast milk of women from 19 different states across the country. And that study discovered that every one of the samples they tested had a chemical called perchlorate in it, which is, I later found out, was a chemical in rocket fuel. So if you can imagine the scene, I'm here nursing my daughter, watching this program, and heard this story. And I was completely, dumbstruck. I was outraged.
Right. And probably freaked out at the time, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I had always been an environmentally aware person and really making the best natural choices I could for myself. But there seemed to be this sort of blind spot. I just had always assumed that breast milk was as safe as it could possibly be. So this was definitely a bursting of that, new maternal bubble that I was in. So, you see unfortunate things on the news all the time that really can disturb you. But this was something I just couldn't let go. So I had some other friends who had become new mothers around the same time, and we just sort of had a chat and decided we would do something about it.
Fantastic. That's great. So what have you done so far in the past few years? 5 years.
One of the first things we did early on after sort of coming up with the name Moms and sort of planning that as an organization was to actually hook up with the Breast Cancer Fund on efforts to pass SB 484, which was a disclosure law about toxins in cosmetics. And one of the first things we did 2 weeks after our lunch party was to hold a stroller rally outside the governor's San Francisco office, where we had 25 moms and babies in strollers lined up with signs outside of his office. And we got a couple of cameras, and there was a little bit of media around that. So we realized that we were on to something when it came to raising awareness. And
great idea.
Yeah. So that was sort of one of the first things that we did. But we've been involved in efforts to ban flame retardants from bedding products in California, working on with biochemist Arlene Bloom a few years ago. We've been involved in.
Let me just stop you there. So tell people about what's going on in their mattresses, because a lot of people are not aware about the toxic chemicals that are loaded in particularly crib mattresses. That's what kind of freaks me out, that babies who are sleeping 18 hours a day on a crib mattress with flame retardants in it. It's frightening.
It is. It's the kids. The issue of flame retardants. California has laws that basically require the use of these flame retardants that aren't in use in other states across the country. And so, that's one of these things. There's a big myth that they're necessary, and they aren't. And there's lots of evidence about their negative health impacts on wildlife and their presence in breast milk. And the size of children, as you said, the frequency of them being in those cribs exposed to these chemicals that then come out, are in household dust, where they settle on surfaces. Kids can, put their fingers in their mouths and ingest them as well as inhale them. So, flame retardant chemicals, have endocrine disrupting properties, so they can affect the development of children's bodies, affect behavior and brain development, and contribute to cancers later in life. So they're unnecessary, they're ubiquitous, and the only people who win through their use are the chemical companies. So
right. And there's an easy switch. I mean, people can buy natural latex mattresses for their babies and as well as themselves. That would be a good thing to do, don't you think?
Absolutely. When my son recently turned 2 years old, but when we were, of course, I was unaware of these issues before the birth of my daughter. I worry about that all the time, what I didn't know back then.
Right.
But when I do know before he was born, we purchased a natural mattress that didn't have any flame retardants, that was made with organic cotton. And I felt really good about that. And I made it a point when he moved to a big boy bed that I gifted that mattress to a friend who was having a new baby. So it
fabulous.
was something that you definitely want to pass those on when you can.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm wondering what the presence of all these toxins in breast milk. What does that say about the body burden that's in the rest of us? The rest of our bodies, the rest of the population. Is that sort of an indication that we're all pretty polluted?
Well, as you mentioned in your introduction, babies are born with upwards of 200 chemicals in their cord blood, and that is just, that's a staggering statistic. And that it's true that the presence of toxins in breast milk it's sort of a window, a lens to sort of show, what the rest of us may be carrying around in our bodies. And the fact that breast milk is easy to acquire, it's readily available, it's a non-invasive or minimally invasive process to get the breast milk for testing. So it is a good biospecimen to use to take a look at what the rest of us might be carrying with us. And the fact that breast milk has a lot of fat in it, and many of the long-lasting chemicals like pesticides and flame retardants tend to settle in the fat deposits in our bodies, and so you're likely to see the same kinds of chemicals in breast milk that you would in if you were testing tissues in our bodies.
Now, some pregnant women who are listening might be thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't, maybe it's not safe to breastfeed. So what would you say to them?
I would say that, our tagline at Moms has always been that breast milk is the best milk. Let's keep it that way. And I think it's really important. I found this out about perchlorate breast milk when my daughter was 6 months old, and I continued to nurse her until she was nearly 3 because it's such an amazing resource for children. And there have been studies that have shown, I believe with PCBs, that even though they compared children who had high levels of PCB exposure in the womb to children who were breastfed, and the same group of children, but the ones who had been breastfed actually had fewer developmental disabilities as a result of that PCB exposure than the children who were not breastfed.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some scientific evidence to show that breastfeeding mitigates some of the exposure in the womb. So
right.
That's definitely a positive, on top of all the other many, many benefits that it provides.
Right. And I guess the message is that if you're a pregnant woman listening, that the key really is to help, keep your body clean and not expose yourself to all the toxins that we're being exposed to, the fragrance in the shampoo, the skincare, lotions that you're putting on, even electromagnetic fields. I had Ann Louise Gittleman on my show last week, and she wrote a book called Zapped, and she was saying that babies in the womb are particularly sensitive to electromagnetic fields because they're bathed in water, and the water is a conductor of electricity, and so it's so important for pregnant women in particular to be aware of that and to kind of unplug and definitely not put a laptop on your belly.
Beth, I have to say thank you for that. That's something that I wasn't aware of, and in terms of, and the way that you just described that, is resonates with a lot of people. You thinking about that little being in the womb surrounded by all that water, and you think that it's as safe as can be in there, and the fact that there are all of these elements in our environment that sort of are invading that sacred space is really disturbing. But there is something that we can do, just by eliminating what exposures we can before we become pregnant, when we're pregnant, eliminating anything that we could be exposed to, that could interfere with subsequent pregnancies, or it would just serve to make us and our families healthier.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mary Brune from Moms Making Our Milk Safe. We'll be right back.